welcome to this Titan stage. My name is Taylor Sheldrake, and I work across ecosystem and growth at Motion Lab Berlin, Germany's official deep tech hub. And like many of you in this room, I care deeply about what it takes to build products with real impact. So it is a genuine joy to be kicking off this stage with you this morning. Not just because it is a room full of remarkable people. I mean, look around you. Look who's all here within this venue, but because what this gathering actually represents. There was a time when Europe engineered the future. Da Vinci's flying machines, Copernicus reordering the cosmos, James Watt's steam engine, and let's not forget Marie Curie's radiation therapy. Of course, there's also Gutenberg's press. For centuries, the most world-changing ideas came from this very continent. But then something shifted. That is that all of a sudden, the most promising founders traveled to Abu Dhabi and the US to access growth capital. And in addition to that, we can no longer guarantee the security of our very own continent. That, with alongside the defining technologies that are no longer being built and developed or funded in this very continent, and instead going elsewhere. DTM exists to change exactly that. This is Europe's modern-day Medici network, bringing together capital, customers, and the courage to power a new deep tech renaissance. Over the next 2 days, you're going to be surrounded by 800 corporates, 1,000 builders, 500 investors, and 20,000 carefully curated one-on-ones. 2 days, one venue. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a conference. This is Europe's fastest path to the deal that matters. And we begin right here, right now, with one of the most urgent questions facing our continent today. And that is, can Europe defend itself? And can it build the technologies to ensure that it stays that way? We start deliberately with defense, not because it is an easy choice, but because it is a necessary one. The security of this continent is no longer abstract. It is a procurement decision, a funding thesis, a technology build that is happening in real time. And the very first session on this Titan stage is all about precision strike, meaning the technologies behind how modern-day militaries identify, reach, and neutralize threats, with accuracy that was unimaginable a decade ago. So for those of you who do not know what a Titan session is or weren't here last year, it's pretty simple. We have some remarkable or astounding people on stage with us today, each of them getting 10 minutes, no panel, no moderation, just their raw insights. And with that, I think it's about time we start with our very first Titan, who sits at the strategic intersection between the defense advisory and technology company building of what is coming next. He is the former head or at the highest level of a NATO command. Please welcome former Deputy Supreme Commander of the NATO Act, as well as CEO of 5-Star Strategy, General Chris Badia.
Good morning, everyone. I just was asked to give you a brief and short introduction into why deep precision strike became so important, why the focus is there, and why it matters. And I give you a pitch from a NATO's perspective and where we were thinking over the past 3 years. Why is it coming that way, ladies and gentlemen? You have to go back to 2022 when NATO at the Madrid summit refocused on the new strategy. The new strategy of NATO is deterrence and defense. What a lot of people forget in Europe is everybody talks about the defense, but not so much about deterrence. And deterrence is much more important because, as we all know, if you have to defend right away, a lot of things went wrong when it comes to what deterrence really means. What deterrence means, ladies and gentlemen, from a NATO perspective and the way we were planning that is that you either can deter by denial or you deter by punishment. And at best, you have both available and you combine them in how you do that. Why do I say that, ladies and gentlemen? Because when you look at it, NATO is per se, it's a defensive alliance, it's a defensive setup. That's why most of the capability and technology focus is on defensive weapon systems. So you have integrated air and missile defense, you have the setup, and this shows you that if you have a good setup, then of course you deter already by denial. this is where the integrated air and missile defense goes. But if you look, for instance, towards Israel, if you look at the Iron Dome has a success rate of 80%. And that shows you that you can only deter by denial to a certain percentage, but there will always come something through. So you have to think more about it. So you might have heard that term, do you shoot the archer or do you shoot the arrow? You shoot them both. So this is where it comes back, where you need to have all those capabilities available, you combine them, and how you do that. So this is where then, when we came to grips with the nations overall, the 32, when we said we need to change when it comes to deterrence and defense, we need to set up the complete strategy, so it cannot be only defensive. So this is where NATO came forward and said, okay, what are the major focus areas we need to look at, and where the nations need to come back, where they need to provide the capabilities. So this is then where we came forward and said, still, number one is integrated air and missile defense. You need to defend your territory, but at the same time, deep precision strike. So deep precision strike moved up at priority number 2, how nations need to come forward in order to combine it. And just we have 5 of them, just the other one is land formations, command and control, and sustainment and enablement, just to give you the full view how we approached the nations as we went forward. So having said that, so now the question is, what's the percentage? What's the balance? We said, okay, we need about 70% defense and 30% offense to really move forward. And then we see, because we did a lot of analysis, if you look at broader Russian military threat and how all those things go, and how do you then really defend it? So having done all those things, so we came forward and said, okay, deep precision strike is something we really need to invest in, and this is how we go forward. So that's the offensive part, if you will, in the discussion as we go forward. So now if you take this offensive discussion part, the question really is, what is deep? If you talk in army terms, well, maybe 50, 100 kilometers already deep for them. But this is not from a strategic point of view where you go. Because you might have heard there is up to 300 kilometers, there's from 300, maybe out to 1600 kilometers and 1600 kilometers and more. When you talk from a real strategic point of view, I can tell you it's even a lot further than 1600 kilometers. Because why? Again, from a NATO perspective, what everybody has to understand when you think about how could we really leverage, how could we go into those things. Because if you look at geography by Russia, and this is what we are looking at, 3000 kilometers is something you really need to reach, because this is where they might have their industrial base, where they have C2 knots and all those things. Why do I say that, ladies and gentlemen? Because at the end of the day, if you go deterrence by punishment, you really have to have the full range available and still stay conventional. Because at the same time, there will be a discussion, there are roundtables this afternoon as well. You have this discussion, is it becoming close to a nuclear discussion? Where are we going? Because this is what you have to keep in mind when you talk those discussions or when you talk those points. And I can tell you, from a NATO perspective, again, everything we do, we need to keep the complete conventional array available in order to stay below the threshold of nuclear. So you see, there are so many things in there. So when you think about it, you have to, wherever you want to invest, wherever you want to develop something, you need to think about the ranges, you need to think about the impacts, you need to think about what can I do with that. Having said that, so that's number one. Mass is important. The technology is important, the range is important. When it comes to mass, of course, there is high tech and there is a bit of a lower tech still with far reach, because you need to have it in inventory. And that's something at the same time where we all have to discuss and take the question and say, how can we scale that? What will not happen, I can tell you that, what will not happen, that the nations are buying whatever is out there and put it on stock. This is not happening in it, so we need to have contracts and we need to see and come forward that you can scale as tensions are growing, and then really get and procure whatever's necessary on that stage or in that stage at the same time. So having said all those things, the other thing I want you to think about is, now we heard the US will not be able in providing deep precision strike weapons as they thought they could provide it to the European theater. That's a fact. So we need to do more about it. But it's not only about the weapon, it's about the whole kill chain. So you really have to think, when you go into that, how do I feed into that kill chain when it comes from satellites, when it comes to cyber, when it comes, how do I detect, how do I fuse, how do I engage, how do I analyze, all those things. Those are things that need to be discussed, and we have to see how we bring that into in one approach as we go forward. So deep precision strike, that's what I really want to get at, is it's high demand. It's high focus by NATO. It's needed. We need to scale it. And at the same time, we need to have a certain European autonomy, at the same time be interoperable with all the other systems in order to get there and field European capabilities together and interoperable with the US systems as well. Where can the startups be there? As what we see and what we hear, we need to have a lot more speed. And this is where the startups really come in, with when it doesn't matter if it's propulsion, if it's a SIS-2 system, or it's identification system, whatever is in there. So you have the capabilities in being a lot faster, because what we are seeing, if you look at the established programs we are seeing right now, everything goes 2030, maybe 2030, 2030 past. I tell you, it's yesterday. This is what you need if you want to deter in the correct way. So this is what I just wanted to give you from a NATO perspective, NATO nations perspective, German perspective, where things are going. And this is what you need to think about when you think, how do I really develop deep precision strike capability? And it's more than the weapon. That's from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, for opening this stage. Now we're going to move on to our next speaker, where I believe you are also a board member of their company, very suited for this very stage. They are trying to close the critical gap in Europe's air defense with a technology that is already battlefield tested. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the CEO and co-founder of Titan Technologies, Balzas Nagy.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, it's a special pleasure to be on this stage on the Titans as a real Titan. I mean, when we started, and this is what I really like in our story, 2.5 years ago, I was in a similar conference, and I was telling, hey, we are doing interceptors. And they were like, okay, what is interceptor, and why do we need that? Like, and no one understood really what's the meaning of that. Now, 2.5 years later, it's not a question anymore, right? So this is, interceptors are everywhere, and this is also how our story started. When we were in Kiev in Ukraine in the first time, it was 2.5 years ago with my co-founder. I had a very small car, and I didn't even know what's happening when I'm there. And we were participating in a hackathon which was organized by the government and by Mikhailo Fedorov, who is right now the defense minister. And that was the first time in my life when I really experienced what does it mean to be attacked by a drone. It was just 1 kilometer from us away, and it made a very, very huge impression also and impact that we have to solve this problem, not just for Ukraine, but also for Europe, because this is definitely the next thing. And then afterwards, I was trying to convince investors, banks. It was everything very difficult at that time. So that's how the story started. And what we realized there, that we need a completely different air defense architecture. We have to make it more cost-efficient for Europe. And this is also our vision, to building Europe's next generation air defense architecture. We started with the drone interceptors. In the second step, we are doing the drone defense systems with different platforms integrating into the existing architecture. And in the first step, it's about the multi-domain air defense, how we heard about General Kisbadia. But why do we need that? What are the principles of the new air defense? There is a cost asymmetry in this game. We cannot shoot down drones, 20,000 euro drones with a €1 million rocket. We need mass deployment. We not just need single standalone systems, but we need that in networked and integrated version. We have to be in Ukraine. And we have a very, very short iteration cycle. We have to be able to change our hardware and our software on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And this is also why we are building. I don't have to explain the problem. It's for all of us we are aware of the problem, that we can right now destroy manned vehicles, manned tanks, with a 2,000 or 1,000 euro cheap drone. What makes us also special, and this is, I think, what I believe makes a huge difference, when we are also there in Ukraine, we are also there and risking our lives. It's not just building a team up there, it's to be present and be risking also our lives. And this is also what I really like in our team spirit, that also employees from Germany, from Munich, they are going there, they are risking their lives, and they are coming back even more motivated than before. This is an air defense architecture, how it looks like and how it can be extended right now, also with solutions like interceptors. What we see, there is a huge gap between the 10 and 30 kilometer range, what we have to close. But we shouldn't close it with very expensive missiles. We should close it with cost-effective and mass-deployed interceptors. I talked about the iteration cycle, and I think this is something very, very important. Here's a concrete example how it evolved also during the war. I mean, we started with a very simple Shahed 136, and this was like flying completely different than how they are flying right now. They were like very slow, they were like flying at a very low altitude, and now where we are, they are much bigger. We have the generation 5, Geron 5, which is also has a different speed, has a different altitude, and has also different trajectories. And this is also what I mean. We have to be able to adapt our products from the hardware to the software side. What we do at Titan is we are making 200 times more cheaper to protect the same airspace than before with the legacy systems. How we are doing that is with autonomous, cost-effective, mass-deployed interceptor systems. And this is how it works. It's starting with the detection of the radar, where we are detecting the enemy drone in the air. After that, we are deploying the interceptors immediately and getting into the air. And at that point, we are taking over the control by air-to-end detection and AI, and doing an autonomous endgame and neutralizing the target with a payload. And this is something very, very important, because this means also that it's not a standalone system. It's an integrated system into the existing battle management systems, into the existing ground detection systems. And here, a video about how we are solving the same problem also for Class 1 drones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Balzos. Do you mind giving me your clicker quickly? Thank you. All right. Thank you for kicking us off this morning. We're going to move on to our third Titan for this session, who has spent 15 years operating at the intersection of policy, government, and defense technology across Europe and the US. He now leads strategy at Destinus, a company building and manufacturing strike and air defense systems at a European industrial scale. Please welcome their Senior Vice President, Vitaly Shikilavarov. I probably did not get the surname perfect, but you may announce it again shortly. Here's your clicker. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to represent Destinus. To start off, Destinus is, by numbers, and let me tell you that our company is just 4 years old. But by numbers, we're the #1 cruise missiles producers, not only in Europe, I would say in worldwide. So it's not a small thing, it's a lot. And we started Destinus to fix something that Europe had become very, very good at avoiding, defense. Think about it. Your phone runs AI. Your car, your Tesla can read lanes, signs, pedestrians. The navigation system of Tesla is more sophisticated than the navigation system of any aircraft carrier of Pentagon. Your vehicle can map your apartment. Your watch knows when you're sick before you do. And yet, some of the systems, defense systems that Europe relies on, some of the systems that protect the capital today are engineered and developed before most of engineers were born here. So technology, as you see, and we saw it at Destinus, has accelerated, but defense did not. So that's how we started this company. It does not work. It's OK. For 30 years, defense has been someone else's business. And this led to the fact that primes became slower. The big tech companies walked away. Working in defense became very, very unusual, or something polite Europeans do not talk about. It was quite a good luxury position, and it did work out for quite a long time, until February 2024, but it did not work out since. So here's what changed. Imagine a football match. Football team. One football team has a goal the size of a barn. The other team has the goal size of a small window. Same pitch, same 90 minutes, same ball. Guess which side would win? And this illustrates exactly how defense looks like. A cheap drone forces an immediate reaction and triggering very expensive missile to take it down. Tens of thousands on the one side and millions on another side. And obviously you can do it. You can do it once, twice, 5 times. But you cannot do it 200 times. You cannot do it like Ukraine does every night 1,000 times, because the side that runs out first will lose. And cheap in this sense does not mean bad. This is a misconception. Cheap means producible. Cheap means replaceable. Cheap means upgradable. And cheap means you can keep fighting after 1 week. So the real question is not how to build the best possible system, best possible cruise missile. The real question today is, can you build enough of them? Can you update them? Can you replenish them? Can you do it under the pressure? And this is exactly why we started Destinus, to answer this question. We built European strike and air defense systems at industrial scale, as I said. Not as a separate product, not as an individual architecture, but as a one industrial layer. So cruise systems, interceptors, engines, guidance, autonomy, navigation, production logic. Autonomy helps you to navigate system, find coordinate, and survive. And then the command authority remains human always. Because in modern defense, the product is not only the missile. The product is the ability to build it, to launch it, to learn from it, to replenish it, and all this at industrial tempo. So as you see, what we do, it's not a concept or PowerPoint presentation. We are 4 years old. We are around 1,000 people. We are 1,000 people across 7 countries in Europe. We are real engineering teams, real productions, real systems, real customers. And throughout the joint venture recently with Rheinmetall, we add to existing logic the industrial execution. And all our systems are European-made, European supply chain, European capital, and unlike many others, legacy companies, we do invest, and I believe this is very important, first. And we then ask Europe to scale what works. So there's, from our experience, supplying and working in Ukraine from pretty much day one, I can tell you there's no magic weapon. And whoever tells you one system can solve everything is either a consultant or is trying to sell you something very expensive. Because the future is not the product. The future is architecture. Strike and defense system built in the same logic, built to be updated, sustained, replenished, integrated, interconnected, built to change the cost equation, to be cost asymmetric. Because for us in Europe, we do realize that sovereignty now matters the most, but the sovereignty has not or is not a blind slogan or a nice speech in Brussels. Sovereignty is very, very, very practical term. Can you build it? Can you update it? Can you replenish it? Can you control it? Can you use it without someone's permission? Can you use it without someone's permission when you need it the most? And this is sovereignty. This is how it works, which brings me to Germany. In Germany, you guys have the industrial base, you have the capital, you have the engineering culture for long, long decades. Germany knows the most probably how to build things the whole world relies on and depends on: cars, machines, factories. And now, and I believe this is the call to all of us and you primarily, Germany can and can help to build European defense that Europe really, really depends on. Not one day, not somewhere in the future, now. And because Europe, as you see, does not lack any talents, does not lack capital, it lacks one simple thing: conversion. Talents in the systems, capital, conversion of capital into factories, the factories, the engineering conversion into capability conversion into the real deterrence. That is the work. This is the work for you engineers, for you investors, the builders in this room, and this should matter for Germany. Because let me tell you one thing: defense is becoming one of the most consequential technology sectors in Europe. Defense. If you want to build another app that helps you to order coffee very fast, I believe the civilization will probably survive without you or your app. Maybe barely. But if you can invest your time in capital and technology, this will bring Europe to where it belongs. So you don't have to like the war. Nobody likes the war. And we do this not because we like the war. Defense matters because without deterrence, peace without deterrence is just a simple hope and maybe a couple of nice press releases. In 2022, Putin looked in Europe and saw very clear a price that he was willing to pay. And our job and the job of defense industry in Europe is to make sure that the next aggressor, whoever it will be, looks at Europe and sees a price, technological price, that is too high to pay. That's why Europe needs to build hard things again. Europe needs to build hard things again. And that's why we do it. That's why I'm here. And that's why I join you to join the defense industry, and particularly the defense industry in Germany. Thank you.
Thank you. That's why it's that. If you ain't got no money, you got the blues.
Thank you, Vitaly, for a rather or very profound insight. And notably also a company that has, within 4 years become a global category leader and is completely built and funded within Europe. And that says exactly why they are in this stage. We're going to move on to our next titan, who is building the software intelligence layer for modern precision systems at Stark, a company focused on redefining how defense AI gets deployed at speed. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for their CTO from Stark, Johannes Schabak.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm very, very excited about seeing the momentum that we're building up here in Europe in order to defend our values, our families, and what's dear to our heart. And so we started a company called Stark 2 years ago in order to build modern weapons of war. We say that unapologetically, unequivocally, because we want to put modern weapons into the hands of those who defend us. Deep strike and deep precision strike is at the very core of what Stark has always built. Small, attritable, highly autonomous, mass-producible systems. And I would like to share in the next 10 minutes a little bit of a glimpse inside what drives Stark as a company today. We are 500 people across Europe, a lot in Munich, in Berlin, in Kiev, we're 80 people, in Swindon, in Greece. And so we are aiming to build a pan-European powerhouse that brings the greatest minds and talent together across engineering, software, hardware, and all the functions. And so as the first important cornerstone of how Stark builds is to finance our own roadmap. We're not waiting for a tender to come out. We can't wait. We don't have time for that. Europe does not have time for that. We're pre-financing that with venture capital, of course, but that also means we have to be double efficient, double fast, and be very, very clear on what we're actually building as we're predicting what will be necessary in the hands of those who defend us in about 3 years' time. And so as another element that always directs the decision-making in our roadmap is automation. Automation helps overcoming the paradigm of one operator and one vehicle. The future has to be with far fewer soldiers available at our battlefronts in Europe and the conflicts that are yet to come, that one operator has to be able to operate 17 systems, if not more. And without training of a pilot that takes decades is too expensive and too error-prone. And so we have to build systems that shorten the sensor-shooter loop by automation with tools such as artificial intelligence when it comes to detecting threats and automatically basically attacking it and ultimately delivering effect where it's needed the most. And so we have, from the get-go, built everything in-house, from artificial intelligence, software, the hardware parts, the propulsion systems, all the way that we can build and sustain a resilient supply chain. Another element that is very unique to delivering effect is being able to deploy more than one system at a time. That not only saturates air defense systems, but it also helps coming up with new concepts of operations that help to adopt in a very dynamic battlefield environment. So depending on the situational awareness in Ukraine or at the various conflicts that are yet to be seen in Europe, the requirement of being able to mix and match different effectors in the matter of minutes is what's absolutely key to what we think is required in the future. And so we have built in multi-vehicle, swarming and multi-threat capabilities from the get-go into one software layer called Minerva that allows the operator to attack one threat, several threats in one go. The next piece element is one we have delivered a product, say, to a TRL 3 or 4, is battlefront proximity. It's actually a pattern that we've seen with Titan and also with Destinus before, that delivering and testing out in Ukraine is absolutely essential in order to ensure success and relevance at the battlefront. And so for us, with 60 people in Kiev, we are very, very, very close to the battlefront, getting feedback all the time and testing systems out as soon as we can deliver them. That doesn't mean they will always adhere to NATO standards. That's actually not possible. But that also always means that it has to deliver an effect in order to be relevant at the battlefront so that we can take those learnings back into continental Europe and ensure that certification needs, requirements, warhead safety, etc., is met. And that brings me to my next topic. Deterrence only works if we can procure in large numbers. We can only procure in large numbers if the systems are safe and if they adhere to the legal framework that is given to us. That is often very cumbersome. However, it is necessary in every single safety rule, etc., environmental conditioning is necessary. So bringing a system from the battlefront, adopting it to NATO standards, is extremely hard, but it's also extremely necessary in order to build and procure large numbers. So for us at Stark, this means testing, validation, and verification about 80% of our time. We actually don't spend that much time on developing. It's a lot about validating and testing and ensuring that we hit the reliability that we want. We even buy our own tanks just to ensure that we always be able to test as rigorously as we need to. And the essence and the end ultimately is to build an industrial deterrence strategy. That is the very core of Stark, to contribute to deterrence in Europe. Not only defensive, but in particular also offensive. I think we just heard it earlier from General Beta that only if we are able to supply and build in large numbers, we are capable of contributing to the safety and the way of living, preserving how we're currently living here in Europe. That requires supply chain sustainability, sovereignty. That requires to build production lines that can build to scale and can dynamically add on different capacity as it's needed. And that also requires, as the battlefront continuously evolves, to in-week updates every couple weeks. And so this ultimately is what drives us here at Stark. And I'm very, very happy to take on chats and conversations later today, how you could maybe help if you want to join in some sort. We're very, very open to cooperations of all sort. We're not pretending to be the one-fits-all solution. That would be very, very silly. On the contrary, we want to be a partner, a team player in a consortium and helping make Europe safe again. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. A pan-European company you are building there at Stark, which I think goes well in hand with the motto of the DTM. Right, ending off our very first sessions of Titans is someone who sits at the world's largest defense companies and is the architect of how capital flows towards the next generation of capability. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Michel Lemaire, Finance Director for Corporate Development and Strategy at BAE Systems. And the stage is going to revolve exactly for you now. I need a quick runner. There it is. Perfect. Michelle, the stage is yours. Thanks. How do you click?
Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to be here with the numerous companies that have presented so far, and really impressed with the colleagues that were on the Titan stage and the technology that they've developed. My name is Michelle Lemaire. I'm the Finance Director of Corporate Development and Strategy at BAE Systems. For those of you who are a bit less familiar with us, we are the 6th largest defense company globally. We've got about a 55 billion market cap, so we're not quite a startup. 30 billion pounds of sales, an 84 billion pound backlog. We are the largest defense company in Europe as well. We operate in 25 countries. We have 8,000 direct employees in continental Europe, and we've got 2,200 European suppliers. So we are a partnering organization, as you can tell. We're headquartered in the US, or in the UK, sorry, but the US is our largest market. It's about 45% of our sales. We also have big footprints in Australia, Saudi Arabia, where we're both the largest prime, as well as the UK. And we've got an international footprint across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. We're probably best well known for our more exquisite platforms, where we support our allied governments in delivering that kind of national critical capability to allies. So you probably heard of the Global Combat Air Program, which is a joint venture that we've done with Leonardo and a consortium of Japanese industry that's providing that sixth-generation fighter air jet, as well as the sort of digital backbone and other autonomous capabilities that will accompany that. We're a partner in Typhoon in Europe. We are a key supplier of F-35 capabilities, a design partner with a 10% work share. So we're in all those major air classified programs. We work with the US, the Australian, and the UK government on AUKUS, so that sort of deterrent around nuclear submarines, which we're partnered with them and providing Australia greater build capability. And we're partnered in Norway as well, where we're working with Kongsberg on delivering them the Type 26 frigate. So as you can see, a very large portfolio of bigger scaled programs and product capabilities. In Poland, we're working with PGZ. So we're working with them to build up their 155 munitions capability. So we're helping them start up a greenfield capability, indigenous sovereign, so that they're able to build their own munitions. And of course, we're a big provider of land vehicles. So the CV90 built out of Sweden, that's our program, as well as the turrets that go on those. And in the UK, as well as across Europe, we also have a big cyber and security business, which is led by our digital intelligence business. So a pretty big, broad portfolio. But I think as a number of the team members here today have talked about, we are investing for disruptive technology as well. And that is done not only by those big programs, but smaller technologies. We recognize that our customer base is looking for some of those slightly more cost-effective products. In the UK, we've had this strategic defense review, which has gone for a 40-40-20 split of those capabilities. So 20% exquisite, 40% disposable, and 40% attributable. So, we are maneuvering our portfolio to allow for that, and we're working with the supply chain to make sure we can provide a full offering. We've also set up agile hubs within our business. So within our air sector, not only now do we provide those more exquisite aircraft capabilities, but we've got an innovative hub called FalconWorks that provides drones and pseudo-satellites. It does fixed-wing drones, many of which are classified, so we're not able to sort of shout about them from the rooftops. It does quadcopters. It does a CCA program that we're investing in as well. So, a lot of different kind of capabilities that we are investing in. And just to sort of bust a few myths, we invest as well before the customer orders. We co-invest on some of those larger, more exquisite platforms, but of course, on the more disruptive capabilities, we have our own internal R&D programs. And one of the areas where we kind of differentiate maybe from some of the other parties in the room is because we have that weapons and secure and hardening capability, we partner with disruptors in enabling us to help them harden their capabilities. We might supply them with warheads to put on their cheaper missile systems. So we're partnered with Frankenberg in our munitions business to provide them with warheads. We've hosted a consortium of SMEs for our Odyssey virtual training program, which does synthetic training and mission training. And we're working with Hadean and Bohemia and a number of other smaller companies where we've integrated their capabilities to provide a holistic offering. So we are constantly working with that supply chain. And for recent acquisitions, such as Malloy, which is our quadcopter business, we've put torpedoes on it, and we've got a APKWS that we've put on it. And as you can imagine, firing a an advanced precision kill weapon system, it's quite a lot of aerodynamic engineering that's required in that. So a huge amount of engineering expertise in our company. And so we're not only investing in R&D and our internal products, but we're also adding to our portfolio. And that's one of the key things I want to leave you with today. But we've put £6 billion in M&A opportunities over the last 5 years. So we've added to our business by investing $5.5 billion in a space business that is predominantly US-focused for national security as well as NASA purposes. But we are adding to that sort of satellite, and we see space as a key area of growth for the field. We've done JVs, and we've talked about GCAP. We're also a 37% shareholder in MBDA. We are constantly partnering with our UK allied nations to enable them to achieve what they want. So we're very used to doing joint ventures, and we're a sort of collaborative engineering company, and that's just the kind of culture and ethos of the company. We do bolt-on acquisitions, so as companies sort of scale up, we are looking at helping them continue to scale up and continue to invest in those next generation products. And we also participate in fundraising rounds. So we don't have a corporate venture capital fund in-house, but we do partake in minority investments. Most recently, last year, we invested in a small AI business called Oxford Dynamics, which does sort of visualization of large language model output. And we're using that for national security purposes as well as other capabilities internally. And we can really benefit, I think, the sort of venture ecosystem because we offer a route to market as an integrator of product and capability. We can support them on contract terms. We support some of the SMEs around helping them get security classifications because a large number of things, programs that we operate on are classified. And we have a fantastic R&D tech team in-house as well that can support on kind of continued development of the products that they work on. To sort of wrap it up, we're here to partner. We're here because we're very interested in the technologies that are being developed. I mean, there's some incredible capability sets that have been presented today, as well as in the broader stadium. So please look to us for partnering in the disruptive defense tech ecosystem. Thanks.
Michelle, I'm going to ask you to briefly stay on stage.
Okay.
The privilege of being the last Titan of a round.
Yeah.
You now mentioned that you always, you're open to partner, you're open to collaborate. What is the key element there that a company needs to know when doing that with you?
So I suppose if we're looking at partnering, typically we're looking at culture is one of those key aspects of the team that we're partnering with. Do we think that we can work with that management team? Do we think that they'll deliver? Do they have a differentiating capability? If we're partnering with a company, you can be sure that we've sort of vetted it and there's no snake oil in there. So we look a lot at technology and making sure that what we offer is kind of the best capabilities. So we're really happy to engage in those kind of conversations. So really appreciate anyone who approaches on that.
Anyone in this room that has exactly that conversation that they want to address with Michelle? Hands up. Yes. Okay. You're going to go speak to her afterwards? Fantastic. There's your first connection for today.
Great.
Michelle, it's been absolutely lovely having you. Thank you so much.
Super. Thank you.